No, no buzz. A Just Bees Book Club. We're back. We're back to Stephen King. And as always, if you're watching this, turn it off. Before you do that, go to rangetouch.com/justkingthings. Or search Just King Things in your podcast platform of choice. Listen to the Range Touch folks, specifically Michael and Cameron, talk about this book because they have more and more interesting things to say about it than I do. That podcast is very good. Go to patreon.com/rangetouch. Give them $5. You get to hear them talk about the movie too. A lot of other really good things. That being said, I'm reading Stephen King in publication order as inspired by Just King Things. Which means, God, can I list them off the top of my head at this point? I have read Carrie, the first book, published by Stephen King. Quite good. I have read The Shining. Nope. I have read Salem's Lot, the second book by Stephen King. The best one, I believe, that I have read so far in this particular order. My background, of course, is that I have read the Dark Tower series twice, maybe 3 times. And I've read The Girl Who Loves Tom Gordon and Cujo. And I've read Cell. That was a bad book. I read book 3, The Shining. Had surprisingly complicated but positive feelings about a lot of things in it. Just good book generally. What is that? Carrie, Salem's Lot, Shining. Was Rage after that one? I think it was Rage after that? That can't possibly be right. Am I missing something? I'm gonna do what I don't do while I'm doing these things. rangedtouch.com/justkingthings with hyphens between the just and king and then between king and things. So yeah, Carrie, Salem's Lot, Shining, Rage, Night Shift, the collection of short stories. Those hit and miss, but not bad. Then I read The Stand. I got a 40-minute video about that. And then I read The Long Walk recently, and now I'm reading The Dead Zone. So I am on book 8. Got Firestarter in the can, and I get to read Roadwork, a book that I have, or 2 books, frankly, that I have no associations with or desire to read particularly. But I'm gonna keep doing it because it's been a fun experiment so far. And after that, I get to Dance Macabre, which is gonna be real interesting. Obviously, I'm not doing this in a sustained way, as the Just King Things folks are. Just kind of reading them as they come along. And extremely high level, The Dead Zone's really fucking good. It may just be that I just came off The fucking Stand, a book I truly hated. And then follow that up like a month later, maybe more, with The Long Walk, a book that does Stephen King enough, even though he's writing as Richard Bachman in that one. It gets enough of the things that I truly like about Stephen King right, that I was like, I'm having a good time here. That's about it. It's also a lot of things he does quite wrong. And The Dead Zone just feels like, hey, remember when you like really liked reading a Stephen King book? Because that wasn't was extremely not The Stand. The Long Walk was like almost there, but it didn't quite gel in the right way. Night Shift, obviously, messy. Not messy. Sorry, sorry, not messy. Had moments, but is a short story collection, just a different thing. Rage extremely didn't have that, so it's been a minute since, even only 8 books in, I've been like, oh, you're doing it, you're doing the thing, and The Dead Zone, for its many flaws, does the fucking thing. And I'm not gonna like do the shit I do with other books. I'm not gonna read directly from the text or anything, but like, John Smith. Yes, John Smith is the character's name, as played by Christopher Walken in the film, directed by David Cronenberg. Which I watched immediately after finishing this, and admittedly, like, not in the ideal way, but it whatever. This train of thought was going to end with me talking about how I've never been a person who's like, you missed this bit of the book, but watching King adaptations immediately after reading them has some terrible effect on my brain in that way. And I simply should not do it. So I'm gonna say I'm really excited to rewatch The Dead Zone at some point, in the mid future, because I remember that movie being fucking great. And watching that movie, just only able to see what didn't happen, what beats were missed, was like such a mind-numbingly boring experience, even while I was mad. Anyway, John Smith has an accident while skating on some ice as a kid, has some precognitive things happen, forgets about it for a really long time. Then he goes to the fair with another teacher he's dating when they're both just out of college, and has this moment at a Wheel of Fortune after he scares her with a Jekyll and Hyde mask, where he like wins $5,000, I think, something like that. $500. Yeah, $500, because they're betting dimes. $5,000 would be buck wild. $500 is buck wild in 1970. They go to this carnival date. They declare love for each other, and they both decide that they're going to sleep with each other, but they haven't consummated yet. He catches a cab home, gets in a car accident with some kids who are drag racing, and then he's in a coma for 4.5 years, and he then develops the ability to sense, like a more full-fledged ability to get a glimpse of somebody's future when he touches them. He solves a murder, the Castle Rock murders. This is important because Castle Rock is going to be important, I have been told. Castle Rock does come up in Dark Tower stuff, so I also kind of know this. He moves to Maine, I think, briefly to tutor a kid whose parents thinks he has some sort of light form of dyslexia. And in the course of that, he developed an obsession with upcoming presidential candidates, including a man named Greg Stilson, who we first meet in this book when he's a traveling Bible salesman who kicks a dog to death. He shakes a bunch of hands. He's like, "Hey, Jimmy Carter, you're going to be president. Congratulations." He then shakes hands with Greg Stilson, realizes that Stilson is going to provoke a nuclear war, basically, and decides that the only way he also predicts the death of a bunch of graduating high school seniors at a steakhouse, by way of lightning strike, and can only convince about 30 of them not to go to this thing, so a bunch of them still die. And in the course of reconciling with that and the fact that he knows this nuclear war thing is going to happen, decides that the only way... Oh, and also about 30 pages of going around and talking to everybody he's ever met, about whether or not, if they could, they would go back in time and kill Hitler, which I don't think this book is like the genesis of that, but it's weird. And the morals of the book, I think, are like really deeply embedded in the particular answers given by particular people in that weird 30-page digression. Has all those conversations, and does a bunch of moral calculus, spends months and months sort of alone writing by himself in his journals about all the things that he can uncover about Stilson, The FBI agent who he briefly is intact with after he faints at the Stilson rally where he shook the man's hand and learned he was going to, do nuclear war or whatever, gets murdered in a parking lot somewhere, and he's like slowly, unraveling and there's a whole section that's like him writing out like, here's what I could possibly do with my predictive powers. Can I go to the press? Well, the press, blah, 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 blah. What can I, go into his party and undermine him from the inside? Well, all the flaws here, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, well, I guess assassination's the only moral option here. Which, hey, good on you, Stephen King. Kill Hitler. Yeah. You got that at least. And so he follows through. He's on the camp, like before he's on the proper campaign trail, when he's still just a hopeful. John Smith goes to a little nook on the top of a weird little meeting room, and has bought a rifle and has paid for everything in cash to make himself untraceable. But he also sent letters to his girl, who has since been married for a long time and has 2 kids, even though they had a lovely little affair in a barn when he got out of the coma. Goes up, hangs out there, shoots a bunch of shots, doesn't quite actually manage to kill Greg Stilson, but he does provoke Greg Stilson to grab a 4-year-old and hold up as a human shield that a local gets a picture of, and happens to outrun the goons protecting Stilson, and they take him down in the media. So, bummer on that, Steve. Yeah. You came to the right conclusions, and then you relied too heavily on the thing you had explicitly discredited in your earlier explanation. Yeah. I don't know why I'm in the mood to give high level explanations right now. Not usually a no buzz. Not usually in the no buzz style guide. Is the joke I was gonna make there. I really enjoyed reading The Dead Zone in a way that I have not enjoyed a King book since, The Shining, I guess. It's weird. It's good. There's a bunch of bullshit in it also, but like I would extremely highly recommend this one. I think this is not on the level for me of Cujo or a Salem's Lot. It is extremely on the level of a Carrie or a Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. I'm keeping the Dark Tower thoughts to myself for the time being. At least until I start rereading them, I guess, in a few books from now. The thing that I actually really especially loved about this is that King goes back to some techniques he used mostly in Carrie, which I think in my No Buzz video for that I talked about this a decent amount. But like one of the things I loved the most about Carrie was the formal aspects, obviously, the sort of epistolary aspects, the way that it brought in a bunch of things like newspaper clippings and letters and post hoc like documentaries and shit like that, and sort of interweave them throughout the text in a way that he hasn't really done, but especially the predictive engine, the what do you say? What did I say? The way he spoils his own book constantly. I think he comes back to that with like a real fucking vengeance in The Dead Zone. The way he'll be like, the examples in this are the very obvious ones, right? It's like, that would be the last time Johnny saw Sarah for 4.5 years. That's not even true. That's the later thing. I'm conflating two of them because one of them is uh, like it was just like straight up like, but Johnny would be in a coma for the next 4.5 years, and it's like before they even go to the carnival or some shit like that. And then there's another one like later in the book where it's like that's the last time they spoke for 3 years, and then he fills in those 3 years with things that happen. Like it's not just like here's a cliffhanger, here's this resolution. It's like here's a cliffhanger. Like I don't know exactly how to explain it, but there's a way that Stephen King writes specifically, where he just like bursts in with like the omnipotent narrator, like a moment of like these fucks don't know what's about to happen to them, but you do. It's dramatic irony on some level, but like way of just like telegraphing what's going to, not telegraphing, explicitly stating something extremely important that's about to happen, and then also still letting it happen on its own terms on the page, is a thing that I really loved about Carrie, and a thing that I really really love that he came back to for the Dead Zone. And the sort of epistolary elements, the ways that chapter by chapter it's all very close with Johnny's perspective. Get an extremely close third, but then they'll pull back just a little bit to have a short chapter that's just like some letters that got sent back and forth or something like that. The ending has a lot more sort of those Carrie similarities, but I just yeah, it's he never quite does the full Salem's Lot like zoom the fuck out, like yeah, look through a telescope, here's the narrator looking through a microscope at individuals in the town thing, that I can recall. But he does utilize that really specific way he has about writing about people in general, his ability to draw a with a couple of brush strokes, right? Really well throughout this book. I just a joy, just a fucking joy. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. It's a weird fucking period piece that like is extremely just like allegorical for what is this, the late 80s, politics at the same time, and it's an anti-Nixon book in a weird way. It's anti-Reagan book also, I guess, like in some ways. Yeah, there's a bunch of fucking specific shit in here, like the fucking Chuck character, is that his name? I wonder if I can just flip to a random page and find it. Yeah, Bannerman there. They're still before. No. Oh, Roger Chatsworth and yeah, his son, who I think is named Chuck. Dang it. Whatever, doesn't matter. The kid he tutors one-on-one to teach, and he's like having him read novels, westerns specifically, and like the way he like unlocks the kid's ability by basically like distracting him into answering the questions. There's like a whole sequence where he like fires off a bunch of personal questions at this kid, who I'm just deciding his name Chuck at this point, and then like when they're in the rhythm of answering personal questions, he asks them a question about the book they just read that the kid wouldn't usually be able to answer, and the kid just automatically like responds with full knowledge of what's going on. There's like a theory of brain happening there that I'm sure he read about at some point, and I don't necessarily think it's like it's not a thing where I categorically am like, this is definitely wrong. So that's cool. Because I suspect I'll get there with King at some point if I continue this project. Yeah, the Dead Zone. You can touch people and see what's going to happen in their future or what's happening right now. Like when he shakes hands with Eileen McGowan, his physical therapist. There's a long sequence of this book that is just him recovering from his 4.5-year coma, which I think is great, actually. Not the reading of it, but I think it's really good that he like spends fucking time with that. Can't speak to how he handles it in specifics, but like there is something I think to be said about just like being like, yeah, you don't get to just move on. You have to spend time with the recovery here. But he like, this is one of the big ones early on. He like touches his physical therapist and is like, hey, you got to call your neighbors because your house is on fire. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he like forces her to call the fire department and her neighbors, and it's true, her house is on fire. And like, and he's like, I saved your cat, basically. And she's like, I never want to touch you again, which is legit. There's like whole subplots with like whatever. I'm not gonna have anything intelligent to say about any of this, so I'm just gonna shut the fuck up. Because I want to. I quite like the Dead Zone. I got some more books to read. Hey, thanks for not watching.